Hello and welcome back to the Odds Now YouTube channel for your Friday preview of the PDC World Championship action. The 20th of December, we're getting rapidly towards Christmas, aren't we? And a little 3-day break from darts, but still quite a lot of games to get through between now and then, including 8 today. But quickly first, finally had a good profitable day on Thursday. It's got us back in front for the tournament on the daily picks, and a continuation of the good times rolling for the anti-post for round one picks. The highlight of the day, undoubtedly, in the first game, Lok Yin Lee put up at 6-1 anti-post and went off 5-1, and he managed to get that victory on the big stage over Chris Landman. So that was a really good winner for us. Other winners included the 180s line on the Mansell Matt Campbell game over 5.5 and over 7.5. Both landing, the latter at 3-1, and just generally there were other winners in there, but it was a really positive day, wasn't it? So I'm going to not dwell too much on that. It's in the books now. Hopefully we can build on it and carry on the good times rolling into Friday. Now I've got two of my anti-post round one picks left to run. They both go today, and I have put them up as daily picks because the prices have held somewhat. So this is the first one in the first game, which is getting underway very shortly. I'm a little bit late with today's video, so I could already be head in hands by the time you see this. But Stephen Burton minus 1.5 sets against Alexander Merks is my first pick of the day at 6-5. This was an anti-post preview pick as well. The other 5 of those to run so far have won, so hopefully we can go 6 from 6 here. I just think Stephen Burton has the edge in terms of experience here over Alex Merks, a challenge to a participant who has done some decent stuff on the floor, but this will ultimately be his bout on the big stage at Alexandra Palace, and we all know that can go one way or the other for players. I think he may sense a little bit of an opportunity here against Stephen Burton, but I think Stephen Burton is really underrated, actually. One of the steadiest hands on the Pro Tour. He often gets scalps of big players on the floor. He's had a run to a semi-final this year on the Pro Tour, and he can do it on the big stage as well. He's had enough experience now. This will only be his second visit to Alexandra Palace, but only last month he was playing at the Players' Championship finals in Minehead, which in itself is a good indicator of his consistency this season, because only the top 64 out of 128 plus qualify for that tournament. He made that tournament and he beat James Wade in the first round 6-4. So just shows that this is a man who can take his game to the big tournaments. And I think if he plays sort of 80 to 90% of his best game, he'll have too much for Merks, who is an explosive player at times, but probably lacks consistency and certainly lacks big stage experience. So I'm expecting Burton to get the job done here, 3-0 or 3-1 in the opener. Second game sees Wessel Nijman, one of the most talked about men pre-tournament, taking on South Africa's Cameron Carolissen, and Nijman is priced as short as 1-33 to win this match, which is quite ludicrous when you think that this is a player who's never won on the Ali Pali stage, lost in round one to Steve Beaton last year, but that is testament, of course, to the wonderful year that Nijman has had on the tour. He looks like one of the best players. He is one of the best players on the circuit now, but he still has a lot to learn, particularly at Alexandra Palace. And I am a backer of Nijman, all things told. I'm on him at 3-figure prices, so I'd love him to go deep in this tournament. He certainly has a nice draw. That section 3 was made even more open by the exit of Michael Smith last night, of course. So there'll be a lot of eyes on Nijman here. He should have far too much for Carolissen, who came through the African qualifier dramatically, beating Peter Waijiri of Kenya 8-7, I believe it was. Fantastic contest that was. He'll need to bring his very best game here to trouble Nijman. He's expected to lose 3-0, odds on to lose 3-0. But the way I'm going to play this game, I'm going to have a point on under 5.5 match 180s, which is 27-20 with vBet, and that just looks a bit too big to me, because if we're presuming that Nijman is probably going to win this game 3-0, then there's only going to be somewhere between 9 and 15 legs in this game. So if we're thinking that Carolissen is maybe only going to hit potentially one maximum, asking Nijman to get the other 5 in quite a short period of time, particularly when he'll have nerves of his own. And we've seen a lot of these seeded players look a little bit nervous on their opening game. And Nijman's not a seeded player, but he's as good as one. And just because he's a massive favourite to win this, and he's playing a player not very fancied by the market, we've seen with Rashad Sweetin and with Martin Lukeman's opponent, Nitin Kumar, yesterday, that there is often nerves from these bigger players in these kind of games. I do ultimately think Nijman will be able to keep it under control and win 3-0. But I don't think he'll maybe hit his very top level. And therefore, the unders line on the 180s looks worth a play. 1 point at 27-20 is just a little bit too big for me. No bet in the next game for me, which is should be able to get that up for you. Well, I'll skip on to the one that I have got a bet in, which is Stephen Bunting versus Kai Gotthardt first. I'm going to back Bunting to get the job done 3-0 here against Godat in the final game of the afternoon. The reason being, obviously, we were with Godat in the first game against Suter. He covered a most 180s line for us at 4-1 anti-post, which was fantastic. I thought he held himself together really well after his dart snapped in the first set, and he had to leave the stage for a period to get that fixed. But the difference in quality and the difference in form between Alan Suter and Stephen Bunting is significant. This is a massive step up for Godat. And Bunting as well, generally starts at Ali Pali. His record here in the last 4 or 5 years is exemplary, a quarter-final and a semi-final. He was flying en route to the last 16 last year before being whitewashed by Michael van Gerwen. But just for context, last year in his first game, Stephen Bunting beat Ryan Joyce, a very, very high-quality operator, 3-0 and averaged 107. Now, I'm not saying there's going to be a repeat of that, but what it does show is that Bunting is very comfortable on this Alexandra Palace stage. He's a very quick starter of tournaments, and I don't have any worries about him beating Godat here. It's a bit of a price play, this. I thought the 3-0 will be a little bit closer to sort of 11-10, 6-5. So seeing it out at 6-4 with Ladbrokes, I think you could take that and you get a good run for your money here. It's no disrespect to Kai Gotthardt, who I think he's a very talented player, but still finding his feet on the big stage, still a little bit erratic and inconsistent. And I think Bunting, if he's at 80%, which I expect him to be based on his recent record, will be able to punish those errors. Now, the other game in the afternoon session, the one that escaped my mind for a moment, is Ian White taking on Eric Sandro Sorsing. And I've got with the Asian players a lot in this tournament, and I'm doing so again today, but it's a no-bet game for me, that White versus Sorsing, because of the inconsistencies of Ian White. He has shown a little bit of form in the last 2 or 3 months as Diamond, but ultimately, we saw it at the Player Championship finals. He beat Michael van Gerwen, averaging 102, beat him 6-1. And then in the very next round, he lost 6-0 to Mike de Decker, and he averaged under 80. So he's a very difficult player to predict at the moment, Ian White. He's got all the experience, but that said, he did lose to Tomoya Goto, the Japanese player, who will be playing this evening as it goes against Mickey Mansell. But yeah, he lost that tie 3-1 last year in his opening game, so he is prone to an upset. But I can't quite get with Sorsing either, because his previous visit to Ali Pali wasn't anything to write home about. It didn't really bring his best darts, and I'm not sure he's one of the stronger Asian players in terms of raising his game for the big stage. So White and Sorsing, that just gets a watching brief from me. On to the evening session then, and Tomoya Goto, who I just mentioned there, he beat Ian White last year. Well, he's back for more at Ali Pali, and I'm going to have a small go on him to beat Mickey Mansell here at 3-1. Mansell's obviously had a fantastic time of things recently, had a great run in the Grand Slam of darts, and just generally been some really good form from the Northern Irishman, who I think is a very easy player to kind of write off. But he's been a consistent type on the floor and on the stage for some time now, maybe more so on the floor, but we're starting to see the best of Mansell on the stage. But I think this is an interesting dynamic for him here. He comes in as a massive favourite as a result of his recent form. But Goto was really impressive at Alexandra Palace last year. Like I said, beat Ian White 3-1. That was a 4-1 nap of the first round last year, and really pleased to get that one up. But he impressed along the way in doing so, peppered the 180s both in that game and in his 3-1 defeat to Ryan Searle in round 2, covered his 180 line on both occasions. So I think he likes it here. I think he can be trusted to bring somewhere near his best game here, and I think that'll be a big test for Mansell. And Mansell is used to being the man that causes the upsets rather than the man who's being upset. So it's an interesting dynamic for him mentally to have to cope with. And I think there's enough there to want to have a little point on Goto at 3-1. My main bet in this game, for anyone that's followed Antipost, this is the last of the 7 picks, with the other 5 having won, and 2 to come today, Stephen Burton. And then I've done Tomoya Goto over 3.5 180s. There's still 11-8 there with BoyleSports. That was the recommended price pre-tournament. Well, 6-4, so near enough. Like I say, covered his 180 lines both against Ian White and Ryan Searle last year. 6 against White, 4 against Searle in 2 games that only went 4 sets. Now, if he nicks a set here, you would think that guarantees 4 sets in this match. And again, you would think he can cover this 180s line. So I think 11-8, good value. That's a 2-point win bet for me. Jeffrey Dwan takes on Florian Hemple, and again, I'm back in the 180s line for a player here. It's Dwan at odds against 23-20. This is a big, big game for Jeffrey Dwan, who is set to lose his tour card unless he can do something special at Ali Pali. He's probably going to need to get to something like the quarterfinals to give himself a chance of retaining that card, which feels very unlikely given the season he's had. But it wasn't all that long ago that we thought Dwan was going to be the next big thing in darts. I remember him shocking Michael van Gerwen at the UK Open with a ton plus average over quite an extended format. So he really did have a lot of talent, Jeffrey Dwan, but quite an aggressive throw. And he's had his problems with injury as a result. If you look at the work that his arm and his elbow joint does, it's not all that surprising that he's had injuries. When he's at full floor, he is a fantastic 180 hitter, though. And I just wonder, with the importance of this game, i.e. winning this money potentially, sparking something that could salvage his tour card, whether we might see a little bit of the old Zwaan magic. And I think that Zwaan has never had a problem with his scoring phase. The problem has always been with his finishing on the outer ring for me. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see him plundering some 180s against Florian Hemple, who's a good 180 hitter himself. So you could easily play the overs line on the 180s. But I thought I would just side with Zwaan just because of the importance of the game. Sometimes these games where you're fighting to retain your tour card can get to players and can affect their performance adversely. I think Zwaan is experienced enough actually to maybe raise his game here and go out kind of fighting. Hemple is a favourite to win the game, but I think Zwaan maybe give a good account of himself. I think odds against we can chance a point there on his 180 line. Battle of the Irish up next then. Willie O'Connor takes on Dylan Slevin. And although the market is quite tight on this, I think that Willie O'Connor might get the job done with a degree of comfort here. It's no disrespect to Dylan Slevin, who is a talented young man. Similar lines to Keane Barry, I suppose, his compatriot, in that a young player with the best years ahead of him. And we've seen flashes of his talent. Probably needs to add a little bit more consistency to his game. I just wonder if he might get a little bit overawed by the occasion here, the big stage and light against somebody I'm sure he would have considered one of his sort of heroes that he looks up to in Willie O'Connor, who's been representing Ireland fantastically for many a year now. And O'Connor, absolute bundles of experience. And his Alexandra Palace record is actually exemplary in terms of getting through his first game and normally causing a seed big problems in his second game. So I just trust O'Connor so much in these kind of games. And I was a bit surprised to see 7-2 available about a 3-0 correct score. I don't think it's a certainty by any means, but I think that probably overshoots the probability of this happening here. I could quite easily see Slevin not quite hitting his top level and O'Connor just doing a job on him. He's relentlessly consistent on that treble 20, Willie O'Connor. Feel like his form and he's in a good place, and just generally his game at Alexandra Palace is rock solid. One of the toughest first round opponents going. I'll chance the 3-0 at 7-2. And that actually is my final bet of the night, because it's a no bet for me in Michael van Gerwen versus James Hurl. A tricky little start for MVG, one you would expect him to negotiate. But Hurl, well, he hadn't had a big stage win, had he, before his first round game? But I chanced Jim Long to beat him purely on that basis at odds against. And Hurl, to be fair to him, he brought that floor game to the stage that we're so used to seeing from him in Players' Championships, where he's often a dangerous sort of outsider in those floor events. He was really, really good. If he can repeat that against MVG, this is a tough start for Michael van Gerwen. But ultimately, you have to expect a little bit of a drop-off in Hurl's levels. I don't know where MVG's game's at. It's going to be interesting to see, but it's very much a watching brief me for this. I wouldn't say that he's in anywhere near as much danger as Michael Smith was against Kevin Dirts. That always felt like a game where Dirts could spring the upset there. I would be genuinely surprised if Hurl gets over the line against MVG at Ali Pali. But I don't have enough confidence. I've not seen enough of MVG to be putting up a correct score or a 180s bet or anything like that. So again, the last game of the night, it's just going to be a watching brief for me. Okay, then. So just to summarise those best bets for Friday at Ali Pali, Stephen Burton minus 1.5 sets versus Alex Merks. That game kicks off in half an hour from when I'm talking. So hopefully you've seen that one flagged on our socials over the last few days and you're on, and hopefully Bertie can get the job done there. Under 5.5 180s in Wessel Nijman versus Cameron Carolissen. I think that'll be a quick game where Nijman might have a few nerves and maybe that 180 line doesn't quite get covered, despite our thought process that Nijman's a beast of a 180 hitter, which he is under normal circumstances. But Ali Pali looking for your first win is not normal circumstances. A point on Stephen Bunting to beat Kai Gotthardt 3-0 at 6-4. That just feels a little bit too big for me, given Bunting's exemplary record in the early rounds at Ali Pali. On to the evening then. I've got 2 bets in Tomoya Goto versus Mickey Mansell. I'm going to chance a point on Goto to beat Mansell at 3-1. And I certainly do see him pushing him close. So that gives us plenty of time for Goto to cover his 180 line of over 3.5 at 11-8. He did so in both of his games last year against Ian White and Ryan Searle. So hopefully a repeat there. I'm going to chance a point on Jeffrey Dwan over 3.5 180s. Former top talent, had his wars with injury. He's fighting to save his tour card. I don't think he's going to manage it, but I think he might go down in a blaze of glory against Florian Hemple. And finally, Willie O'Connor to get the better of his young Irish compatriot Dylan Slevin. 3-0 correct score there. Is a little bit of a chance at 7-2, but I think it just looks a little bit big when you consider the experience of the two men in question. Well, I hope you enjoyed your whistle-top stop tour of Friday at Ali Pally. Let me know what you're backing in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the tournament so far. Who's impressed you? Who has surprised you? And have you had any more outright bets since the action got going? Well, if you're not already subscribed to us now as well, please do click that subscribe button. We massively appreciate it. And I'll be back to preview Saturday at Ali Pally this time tomorrow. Go well, and I'll see you soon.